So thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me down here. My name is Terry Marshall. I live in Brooklyn, New York. My family's from Barbados. I've lived in, my family migrated to New York, and I mostly grew up in Boston and New York and Barbados a little bit. Used to go back every summer, but just like in my background. And Intelligent Mischief is a creative studio. I founded in 2013. This is actually our 10th year in existence. We finally got our full budget. Right, way over for the first time ever, and just very excited about still being able to exist. We're a creative studio. We do work to unleash Black imagination to change the future. This gives over here. We're a creative studio that future design lab, unleashing Black imagination, shape the future. Our purpose is to boost invention and imagination, realign action logic, and experiment with new forms of culture and civil society to create atmospheres of change. And this is generally what we do. We do art experiences using pop culture. We use imagination and world building, something we also experiences we give out called imaginals, and also future design labs and salons. Won't go into all that, but what I'm going to do today is just give you a few examples of the type of work that we do. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to give examples of different experiences that we've put on. Nation X. This is a world that we built out. We built it by accident. We actually wrote a book, self-published a book called Black Body Survival Guide. It's a satirical book. It's about how to live in a black body in a racist world, which can only be a story told satirically. And when we started, we found ourselves having problems writing the book. We couldn't write the book, and because we're joking, we're actually in the book, we're telling ridiculous tips how Black people survive, like police brutality and climate racism and so on, right? And we found many of us couldn't make jokes out of this because we're living these things in our real life. So we turned, this is where we accidentally discovered world building. And we turned to world building to get ourselves out of our bodies. And like, who could write this book? Who could be sane enough to write a book and put it out as like, this is a guy that only makes sense in a world that's absurd. And we thought of these agents that came from, these people who came from a liberated Black zone called Nation X. It was a maroon society that's lasted for over 3 centuries, or well, 5 centuries. They're liberating Black folks throughout the Americas and around the world. And they've been sending agents, and they actually wrote this book to liberate Black folks and get them out. And they found out that the most effective way they could get their message out is through music. So they put on this like 24-hour online rave in January of 2020. In this rave, one could go online, and they would enter this club on here. This was a website that you could go to, and we had DJs rotating 24 hours playing DJ sets of all music throughout the African diaspora, and you had different rooms that you could click on. And when you clicked on the rooms, you had people who interacted with you. If you went inside the bathroom, you got a blunt rolling session that you'd use from ancient herbs from the Nation X island. You actually had somebody who's on Zoom teaching people to do this. We had another room where people had tarot card readings. That people interacted, found out like advice for themselves. We had another room that actually led to a storyway about some of the agents believe in the mythology that there is that one group of people believe there's the Black Messiah who will save us all, but there's another group of people that actually believes that's a misinterpretation and that we're all messiahs, right? That the Black Messiah is not a person, but us collectively working together. And how can we find our collective strength to do that? And you interact with that storyline, and it led to like this dance that opened up portals going on. It's lasted for 24 hours. We're hoping the next iteration of this World Nation X to be, we've been working on possibly doing it in LA in a real world party, but that's been kind of slowed down. And what we're actually working on right now is making a AR interactive comic book that details some more of the characters in the world. And what we did, we ended up creating a 100-page world Bible where we've detailed like what's the climate, what's everything from what's the government, what's the climate, what's the political history of Nation X. Is actually it was actually part of the Underground Railroad. There was a division, there was a political faction Underground Railroad that didn't believe that the Underground Railroad needed to end it after Civil War, and they kept it going, and that's how they developed the island of Nation X. This is also when we was online. This is where we got all hits. We didn't know we would have hits internationally. This is where people was tuning in 24 hours onto it. Next world, I'll go through this quickly because I know I'm going to stick stuck. I'm going to go way over the time. Sorry, Sam. Y'all. But we had a lot of different projects there. So Theo's going to kill me. I'm going to be fast. Archipelago, another world. We fortunately got a grant to create this world. Archipelago was a world that we designed around immigration and reparations work for black folks. What this came about was that we became aware of a movement called ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. It sounds innocent enough, but it actually has right-wing roots. It's been heavily influenced and actually propagated by anti-immigration right-wing movements to help develop anti-immigrant sentiment among black Americans against black immigrants. And we was like, this is something unique, very new, unique in the black politic in the United States. So he was like, it's very abnormal, right? And so we brought some people together. We brought some of our favorite folks together, and we did a world building session. We did research, we did a world building session. We thought, what way to combat this narrative but to create to redevelop a new Pan-Africanism, right? It's like we already have something in the global black history that combats this. It was a whole movement, it's an ideology called Pan-Africanism. And we said, oh, how can we reignite that? So we did like a 3-month research where we studied one of the last Pan-African festivals, I'm gonna get this wrong, it was like 1977 in Lagos, Nigeria. And we found out in the studies of this like global festival, we started developing a whole history. Like, what if that festival never ended? What if it kept going on, right? And what if the concept of black people, the black diaspora, was developing the same concept of archipelago, right? Where we saw an unbroken chain of islands together, where people are separate, the people are different, but yet still the same in solidarity with one another. And we figured, what was the best part? We kept reading all this research about the festival. We found out that most people, people like Amiri Baraka, Maya Angelou, who went to this festival, all kept saying like the stage where the artists were at was like the best part, was the happening place where everyone had a party. And we just imagined like, yo, can you imagine being at that party? And it was like, oh, let's do another party. And we created a party, a world party called Archipelago. And what we did was we picked Memphis. We originally were going to go to Atlanta, but then honestly we had a friend who lived in Memphis and said, no, come to Memphis. Atlanta's played out. Memphis is where it's happening. And we wanted to pick some place where possibly, we didn't want to do it in New York. A lot of us were based in New York, but we was like, being in New York, blackness and immigration is almost one and the same. Right? Like there's not too much difficulty. We said, where's a potential place where ADOS may have more of a growing reach? Now, I'm not claiming they have a reach there. We actually, at the end of this, found out that ADOS's reach is not that big. They're very loud on the internet, but not wide. And we picked Memphis, and we had a 3-day experience where we had the first day opened up with a party where we had DJs live stream and battle DJs from Memphis. And we had DJs from London, black DJs from London, Ghana, Brazil, Jamaica, Australia, and all those places battle each other, all playing Afro-diasporic music. And we wanted to create, and we had this place where people walked in. When they entered, this is the sound system we had set up going on the history of sound systems throughout the Afro-diasporic music. And when people walked in, they walked through emerald African forests. We had hammocks set up. People could dream. People slept during the party. They woke up, party some more. This went on for 3 days in Memphis, about November of last year. It's a world that we want to continue going on. It costs $80,000. Don't always have to cost that much, but anybody wants to invest, come and talk to me afterwards. This is more parts of Archipelago. The last part I'll end off with was a project that was an early on project that we came up with that we want to, all of us were fans of the Black Panther Marvel Comics and Black Panther movie put out jointly between Marvel and Disney. I've been collecting comic books since I was 5 years old. I've been a fan of Black Panther since that long. When they announced that the movie is coming out, I knew people would lose their minds. I was like, people have never seen anything like this. We ourselves will lose our minds about that. If people remember the run-up to the movie, that black people themselves lost their minds when this movie was coming out and the announcement of it, right? And people remember all the fanfare that was going on. What we got excited about was the potentiality of that story itself, We was like, people never seen this. Like, exactly, I can't even do any more justice what Henry said in his open remarks about Black Panther movie, the potential of it, the stories, the dreams about it, what people saw in it, a liberated Africa that was never colonized. What's the potentiality of that? And we thought, well, what more people could do with that, right? Because we figured that Marvel Disney wasn't going to like necessarily organize the fans. But we saw that as our job. So one of the things we did was create a Facebook group. We asked people, we saw that people were self-organizing, doing parties and taking over theaters. So we took over two or three theaters ourselves in Boston. At the time, I was living in Boston. We took over the theaters. We created an online group where people who taken over theaters could just could coordinate with each other, and people was talking nationally, and on this Facebook group was just like sharing stories about doing that. And then we made a film guide. We put it for people where maybe folks who may not be familiar with the story too much, right? And we connected some of the parts of the stories that could be connected to different social justice issues in a film guide, and it kind of went mini viral online. One of our first goals was to put on a Wakanda Con. Now, another group actually did a Wakanda Con, but good or bad, they made it happen. We put on mini Wakanda Con, connected to New York Comic Con in New York during that time. And we had people gather and connect and talk about what was the themes they thought central to the movie, and what's the characters they identified with. Then the big thing we did was put together an anthology. We put out 2 anthologies where we invited people who are different activists, who are writers, including Adrienne Marie Brown, who wrote short stories that are all based in the world of Wakanda, right? So they created characters, they used the story world of Wakanda, to create characters of what if Wakanda had decided to tackle climate change? What if Wakanda was doing things around gender? What does education of Wakanda look like, right? And use these as prototypes for what we could do in real life. We also developed workshops that we did across the country using the story world. And then ultimately last year we created a podcast called Searching for Wakanda, Black Euphoria, Search for Wakanda, which my alumni, Akila Hughes, alumni in the Civic Media Fellowship at USC, hosted, thankfully, doing that favor. And we hosted and put it on and put out that podcast. You can find it on Spotify, other places as well, right? Now, that was something we did with that. Now, this last part, I wasn't going to include, but I was like, I could not leave here without showing this, right? So remember I showed you we did an anthology with different writers. I showed you that we did this podcast on the podcast, we invited people who created real life social justice projects that were inspired by the movie, right? We knew there was a lot of people out there like that and put them on. This happened. Disney and Marvel created an anthology called Tales of Black Panther Wakanda, where they had different famous writers, right? Create characters and using the story world of Black Panther to discuss different issues throughout that. Then Disney also came out with a book called Dreams of Wakanda, where they interviewed people, some of the people we interviewed in our podcast, who did social justice related issues and themes in the real world that were inspired by the movie. The only problem I have with that, I just wish we was involved in some way. I'm leaving it up to you, what judgment you want to have about that, but that's just a little taste of what we do. Thank you.